Welcome, M. Solomon here. I have another good presentation, very good presentation we want to share with you. This one comes to us from the great state of Illinois, actual file. And again, if you want to reach me, my telephone number is 202-550-8364 if you want to inquire of auditing and what we do as accountants. You can also reach me at secondarytradedesk@gmail.com, secondarytradedesk@gmail.com. Okay, let's get going. Let's see what we got. Okay, let's look at the numbers we were provided by the consumer, that the consumer was provided the numbers by the lender, by the court. This was in a judicial foreclosure. What are we talking about? We're talking about a cutoff date of 4/1/19. Were we provided that date? No, we were not. We uncovered that date. That is a Y2K cipher. What we were provided was the principal balance that shows on a taxpayer form 1099, $449,500, and we used a multiple of 2. We said that principal balance was multiplied times 2. Why? Because what you have here are contra accounts. Look up the definition of a contra account. It's a trial balance. It's two matching balances that offset one another, and it's used most likely in how they constructed a sinking bond fund, where one number wipes out the other number over time. Contra accounting. So we multiplied the principal balance shown on the 1099 by 2, and that gave us a total of $899,000. Now, the difference between the $899,000, which is the consideration for both balances. Remember, we only had a balance of $449,500, but we multiplied that times 2 to create a contra account. That gave us $899,000. Someone may say, how are you going to justify that? That sounds like something that you might consider conjecture or you made up. Well, because we added to it the difference between that and the judgment. The judgment was for $942,556.63. The difference, let me get the pointer out. The difference there would be $43,556.63. So we took the 1099 principal, multiplied it times 2 to create a contra account, where one washes out the other for total consideration of $899. And we took the judgment amount and subtracted the difference. We came up with $43,556.63. What does that mean? What's the significance of this? Remember, the total there, or the total that we came up with, was the judgment that was entered by the court against the consumer. So what does this mean? I'll show you. So you ask, or you should ask, what does this all mean? The 4/1/19, you recall, I entered that date, and you want to know where I came up with it. I'm going to tell you in a moment. But we took the principal that was shown on the 1099, and what I did was I added the amount that was required to total the judgment value. What I'm doing here is, remember we broke this into contra accounts, 2 different accounts. I'm taking one account and I'm adding that amount as the difference. Okay, that amount was actually the difference between both contra accounts. Well, here I'm just going to add it to one account. And that took me up to $493,056.63. Okay, what does that mean? Well, $493,056.63 and $449,500 will equal the judgment amount. So we're adding that entire balance, this entire installment, to one balance, not the other. What's interesting is, if we divide it by a bonds per annum of 360 days, 360 days goes into this number right here, the combined number, 1,369.6 days. That's 1,370 days. Now, if you take my date here, 4/1/19, you said, where'd you get that from? I haven't shown you yet. And you add the number of days to it, it takes you out to 12/31/22. That ties us out right to the end of this year. Have they been evicted yet? No, they haven't. Can they be evicted? I don't think so, not until the end of this year, which means they're just going through the motions again. The courts are being used in an abusive way. But they're still in the property, and 12/31/22 would be the date of eligibility for when they could evict. If they evict before that, the consumer would have a claim. But that's all based and predisposed to me coming up with this number, which we verified was necessary to make the judgment amount. I've added it to the principal balance shown on the 1099. So now the question is, where'd the 4119 come from? Because we're tying it out beautifully. What are the odds? Come on, what are the odds of coming up with a formula using a 360 bond, number of days, tying out from my date to 12/31/22? Unless I orchestrated this and created a mumbo jumbo model here, anyone could re-engineer this. But no, I'm using actual dates and numbers, and I'm making an assumption for the 4119 through 12/31/22, which is the exact number of days based on 360 days per diem. What you got to understand is this is tight. It's a tight analysis. Now the question is, where am I coming up with the 4119? That's the question you got to ask, because without 4119, I'm not going to try out to 12/31/22 using a 360 day per diem. So where do we get that from? Let's take a look. Okay, if you're ready, I am. Here we go. Let's recap what we found. We have a cutoff date, 4/1/19, that I entered. We have a principal balance, 1099. I multiplied it times 2 to create contra accounts. They gave us a total of 899 and change. I added the difference, 43,556.63. See, I added the difference, and if I actually subtracted the difference from the judgment that the court entered. The court entered a judgment for 942,556.63. So the difference there is, pointer, the difference is what I call a deposit, 43,556. Let's continue, recap. Enter the cutoff date. I took the principal amount that was shown on the 1099, and what we did was added the amount that was, remember, this number here was the difference between these two accounts added up and that number. So I added that number to one of my contra accounts. So 449, I'd add it to this. There you go. I'm adding that number, and that gave us 493,056, and that number was used, factored by 360 days per annum on a bond or bank per annum. And that gave me 1,369.96 days, 1,370 days. And that just took me from my date 4/1/19 to 12/31/22. So I said this is all tight. So the question is now, this number is verified here, but where do we come up with the 4/1/19? Y2K strikes again in a concealed and non-disclosed manner. Every number has a corresponding date, starting with 12/1/1900. Every date will have a corresponding number, and the 4/1/19 in Excel or any other servicing software, that date converts to a number. You want to know what number it converts to? Take a guess. Right there. So the difference between the 899 and the judgment, 43,556, and the 43,556 I added to the principal balance, that is 4/1/19. So the insider knows that they're getting a per diem or per share from 4/1/19 through 12/31/22, which means the insiders know they can proceed and start the unlawful detainer, but they're not going to be able to get them out until New Year's Eve on that date this year, or until after that date. So Y2K, that's what that date equals. That date equals that number right there. It converts in servicing and in all computers, in Microsoft Excel, Google Sheets, whatever it is, that's the way the computers were set up. That is what is being used in order to make this transaction work and make the numbers appear as they have in the court documents and in the 1099. If a lender has this overwhelming opportunity to foreclose based on what we call a gee, I'm drawing a blank right now. The presumption that's made is that if you are in default, then you are in default, and that anyone bringing a claim, if they claim to be a holder in due course, and if nobody challenges that, then they are the holder in due course. and that is a presumption that allows them to proceed with, you are going to have a problem if you can't bring this loan current. So if the courts are overwhelmingly in the favor of a lender, and we know that consumers are not having much luck in court. They think they may, but it's just tolling. The court's extending, as you see here. The court's going to probably extend another hearing until they reach the proper deadline. If that is the case, okay, so be it. Okay, a borrower in default is going to have a hard time prevailing in a case. If the courts are overwhelming in favor of the lender, what then would be the need to have this kind of concealment? You see, that's the question I'm asking. Why would they have to go above and beyond and conceal something such as 4/119 tied to 12/31/22, which is the difference in the amounts that are shown in the judgment and the statement times 2? There's no purpose for it. Well, there is a purpose for it, but it is not something that should be withheld. What you have here is a bond issuer's tie-out. And one has to beg the question, why is the borrower being foreclosed on a bond issuer tie-out? Why would a consumer be involved in that? Well, there's only one reason, because the investor in this bond was none other than the consumer. You are investing in your own foreclosures. The date of foreclosure sale is set at the date of origination or the date of the file sale. The sale was by divestment, and what's happening is you're being portrayed as a bad guy, and you're investing in your own junk bond, and you're ending up losing in the investment 1,000% of the time, from state to state, from home to home, household to household. That's it, folks. So there you have it. And M. Solomon, accountant auditor. You can reach me at secondarytradedesk@gmail.com. Leave a comment. I'd love to know what's going on with your case. If you want to send us information, you can send it at secondarytradedesk@gmail.com. I need a payoff statement and a servicing statement to make any kind of a initial assumption as to whether or not you've got something like this going on. But we do need you to subscribe, and I want you to leave a comment. And there's Uncle Sam. I just spoke to him a little while ago, and he said Y2K manipulation for terms and conditions for tie-outs as bond issuers. He said, I want to know about it. He said, this country is a great country. There's nowhere else you'd ever want to live, and it's still the land of home ownership. And if you don't make the right argument, he can't help you. So anyway, M. Solomon, I'm glad you could join us, and look forward to hearing from you. Like I said, leave a comment and contact us if you have a case you'd like us to look at. Thank you.